Okay, class. Today we're going to be talking about Pearl Harbor. So take out your notebooks. Um, make sure you write good notes, because most of this will be on your test. So Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor occurred on December 7th, 1941. Okay? December 7th, 1941. Remember the date. So this was so during World War II, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and this kind of kick-started the American involvement in World War II. Okay, so that is your typical history lecture. Not exactly that, but that form of just teaching, writing on the board or using the PowerPoint, lecturing to students and students just taking notes down and memorizing the dates or memorizing information, events, characters. That's your typical history teaching that we've seen kind of throughout the years. Most of you in your past classes, you can remember such as things like this. And those are one of the reasons why students don't necessarily enjoy history. Some things that students in the past have said about history is that it's boring and that it has no relevance, and it's one of their least favorite subjects in their classes and in school. And in Bruce Lesh's book, the title, "Why Won't You Just Tell Us the Answers?" His main objective is to it's not to criticize this form of teaching, because it's still a way of teaching and it relays information to the students. But it's just a way to, he expounds on ways that we can add to our repertoire of teaching. He demonstrates different forms, lessons that teachers can take to be able to implement into their classrooms and step away from the lecturing and have students be more involved in their learning. Researching themselves and kind of the things that we're talking about, learning skills on how to write, how to decode, how to think critically. So this goes really well what we've been learning about in our class, because it kind of, like I said, steps away from that lecturing and dives into how students can actually learn. There's the different chapters that talk about the ways of the significance of history and how the lessons that he applies, or that he demonstrates, and how students can take more significance from history. And again, this book, it's more of how we as teachers can pull that excitement from the students, how we can extract that way for them to learn even better, get more involvement in the class, and more than anything, retain that information, because the way this teaching, they can retain information for a test and then they forget about it. But the way that Bruce Lesh expounds on is the way of teaching where students can really retain that information. There's a part where he said when he began teaching, he says that reality arrived in his classroom. Reality arrived in the form of a teenager. And I feel like that's a lot of us, that's where we're going to feel like that once we step into the classroom, we're going to feel ready. And once those students start walking in, that's when reality is going to hit us. And so this book is really great in, like I said, learning different tools of teaching, different lessons. He has, each chapter, he has different lessons, and there's about 6-7 chapters. And he really expounds on each chapter, what the students' activities are and what the learning objectives are, and how the students really get involved. So he does a really good job in doing that. The only thing I would say that he falls short in is kind of going through like I said, it's not a necessarily step-by-step lesson plan, but more broad, which it's I would call it a flaw, because you don't know step by step, but in a way that also leaves room for you as a teacher to kind of add your own 2 cents in. So I feel like maybe that's why he does that, he did that, and just gave a broad version of his lessons rather than a step-by-step. And also because it would have made the book a lot lengthier than what it is. It's only about 200 pages, really quick, fast read. One really good example that I liked from the book, a lesson that he taught, which you can implement in any sort of lesson, is he showed Roosevelt's autobiography, and in his way in which he used the autobiography was used some essential questions on what the students would read Teddy Roosevelt's autobiography and say, what should we take from his autobiography? What was he wanting everybody to get from his autobiography? And in that chapter, he was under the text, subtext, and text, subtext, and context section is where he kind of implemented President Teddy Roosevelt's autobiography. And like I said, it was a way in which students can really dig into the autobiography and kind of tear it apart by themselves and see what was significant, what was he trying to relay with this autobiography, and what can we take from it. Kind of, like I said, rather than just saying this was what Teddy Roosevelt did, this was his address, and hoping the students can remember it. Rather than this way, he handed the autobiography, each student read it, and they kind of debated and went back and forth to see what it was like. And so I really like that example, and we can really apply those sorts of examples into a lot of different characters throughout history or events. Like I said, it's more for students to get hands-on rather than the passive lecturing and note-taking, which is, again, it's great, but this book does a really good job in showing how you can simply take a simple lesson and transform it for where a student can really get their hands on, delve in each event, and extract information for themselves to be able to help them retain it even better. I really like this book. This is actually my second time reading it. I had to read it a couple semesters ago for a different class. So I really enjoyed reading it, going through it again, being able to extract even more information. The first time was kind of a quick read, but I don't think you would go. It would be bad to reread it over and over again a couple times, taking new information each time you read it. So I would definitely recommend this to other teachers, to other educators, whether it be, even if it's not history teaching, they can probably implement these sorts of ways of teaching into other classrooms and other subjects. So yeah, I would recommend this book to a lot of other people.